Have you ever noticed how your mind suddenly becomes a completely different place at night? You're lying in bed, lights off, phone glowing softly, and out of nowhere, your brain decides this is the perfect time to replay every conversation you've ever had, question every life choice you've made, and imagine 10 possible futures that may or may not exist. During the day, you feel mostly functional. At night, though, your thoughts turn poetic, anxious, philosophical, creative, nostalgic, sometimes all at once. And you think, why does my brain only do this when I'm supposed to be sleeping? Most people assume night thinking is just overthinking, or anxiety, or maybe insomnia with a personality. But psychologically, night thinkers aren't just restless, they're operating in a completely different mental mode, one that only really activates when the world goes quiet. During the day, your brain is in what psychologists call task mode. It's focused on doing, responding, reacting, managing, surviving. Emails, conversations, responsibilities, deadlines, social cues. Your attention is outward. You're navigating reality in real time. There's no space to drift too far inward because something always needs your focus. But at night, the external world finally stops asking for you. No notifications, no expectations, no one watching, no one needing an answer, and your brain says, now we can talk. This is when something called the default mode network becomes dominant. It's a system in your brain that activates when you're not focused on tasks. It's responsible for self-reflection, memory, imagination, future planning, emotional processing, and meaning-making. In simple terms, it's the part of your brain that thinks about you. So night thinkers aren't suddenly becoming more emotional or philosophical. They're just finally giving their brain the environment it needs to do what it's been waiting to do all day. And if you're the kind of person who feels deeply, thinks in layers, or reflects a lot, this mode can feel incredibly intense. It's like your mind opens a hidden room at night, a room filled with old memories, half-formed dreams, unresolved feelings, and questions you don't usually have time to ask. During the day, that room stays locked. At night, the door swings wide open. That's why night thoughts feel different. They're slower, deeper, less filtered, less practical, more existential. You don't think, what should I do tomorrow? You think, what am I really doing with my life? You don't think, that conversation was awkward. You think, why do I always feel misunderstood? You don't think, I'm tired. You think, am I becoming the person I thought I would be? Night thinking isn't just mental activity, it's identity processing. Another reason night thinkers feel so awake mentally is because of sensory reduction. When the world goes dark and quiet, your brain receives less external stimulation. And when stimulation drops, internal signals get louder. Thoughts, emotions, memories, imagination, they all come forward. It's like being in a room with loud music all day. You don't hear your own thoughts clearly, but when the music stops, suddenly you notice every tiny sound. Your mind has always been talking, you just couldn't hear it. There's also a biological element. Melatonin, the hormone that makes you sleepy, also reduces the brain's impulse control slightly, which means your thoughts become less censored, less logical, less goal-oriented, more associative, more emotional, more symbolic. That's why at night you suddenly remember things from 10 years ago, or come up with creative ideas, or feel emotions you didn't know were there. The brain's filter is lower, so material from the unconscious rises more easily. Freud called this the royal road to the unconscious. Modern neuroscience just calls it reduced executive control, but the experience is the same. At night, your mind becomes more honest. And that honesty can be beautiful or overwhelming, depending on what's inside. For some people, night thinking feels magical. They write their best ideas at 2 a.m. They feel most creative in the dark. Their imagination becomes vivid. Music sounds deeper. Thoughts feel meaningful. There's a sense of intimacy with your own mind, like you're finally having a real conversation with yourself. For others, it feels like a mental storm, regret, worry, intrusive thoughts, fear, unresolved pain. Things that were emotionally suppressed during the day come back stronger at night. And because you're tired, you have fewer cognitive defenses. You can't distract yourself as easily. You can't rationalize as clearly. So the thoughts feel heavier. This is why night thinkers often get mistaken for anxious people. But not all night thinking is anxiety. Sometimes it's emotional processing that simply didn't get space during the day. Your brain is saying, we postponed these feelings. Now we need to deal with them. And it chooses night because night is safe. No one interrupts, no one judges, no one expects productivity, no one is watching. It's just you and your mind. There's also a personality pattern here. Night thinkers tend to score higher in introspection, sensitivity, openness, and internal awareness. They are people whose minds naturally turn inward. They reflect more, they analyze more, they feel more, they notice subtleties. So when external input drops, their internal world doesn't quiet down, it amplifies. Their brain isn't tired, their body is, which creates that strange feeling of lying in bed exhausted but mentally wide awake, as if your consciousness and your nervous system are on different schedules. Historically, night thinkers were often philosophers, artists, writers, mystics, people who worked in silence, candlelight, isolation. There's a reason so much poetry, music, and art is associated with nighttime. The mind in darkness becomes symbolic, abstract, metaphorical. It stops thinking in tasks and starts thinking in meaning. Night thinking turns life into a story instead of a schedule. And psychologically, that's because your brain is shifting from survival mode to narrative mode. Instead of asking, what do I need to do? It asks, what does all this mean? That's a profound shift. It's also why night thinkers often struggle with sleep, because the same system that creates creativity and insight also creates rumination. The mind starts looping, replaying, simulating, imagining conversations, rewriting outcomes, predicting futures. And since the brain evolved to treat uncertainty as a potential threat, it tries to resolve these thoughts before allowing rest. So you think more, which makes you more awake, which gives you more time to think, which makes you more awake. It's a psychological feedback loop. Not because you're broken, but because your mind is active in a space where there's no external boundary. During the day, reality limits your thoughts. At night, your thoughts limit reality. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. Night thinking often intensifies during periods of transition, when you're changing, questioning, growing, or feeling uncertain about your identity. The brain uses nighttime to integrate new information about who you are. If you're stuck in a job, if you're rethinking a relationship, if you're emotionally processing something unresolved, if you're searching for meaning, your mind will work overtime at night, not to torture you, but to reorganize you. Night thinking is psychological digestion. It's the mind saying, we experienced a lot today, now we need to understand it. The problem is, modern life doesn't give us many reflective spaces. We move constantly, we distract constantly, we scroll constantly. So the only time reflection is unavoidable is when there's nothing left to distract us. When the lights go off, when the world disappears, when your phone finally goes silent, that's when the mind speaks. And for night thinkers, it speaks loudly. The irony is that night thinkers often feel like something is wrong with them, like they're wired incorrectly, like they should be able to just sleep like everyone else. But psychologically, they're not malfunctioning, they're simply more internally attuned. Their minds are less interested in shutting down and more interested in understanding, which is a beautiful trait in the wrong environment. The goal isn't to eliminate night thinking, it's to build a relationship with it, to understand what your mind is trying to tell you instead of fighting it. Sometimes those thoughts are signals, sometimes they're emotions needing space, sometimes they're creative energy, sometimes they're unresolved questions. Night thinking isn't noise, it's information. The trick is learning when to listen and when to gently say, not right now, because your mind deserves to be heard, but your body also deserves rest. And here's the empowering reframe. Night thinkers are not broken sleepers, they're deep processors living in a shallow schedule. Their minds naturally move toward reflection, meaning, imagination, and emotional integration, and night is simply the only time the world allows that mode to exist. So if you're the kind of person whose best thoughts come in the dark, who feels most mentally alive when everyone else is asleep, who finds both comfort and chaos in nighttime consciousness, you're not alone. You're just someone whose mind needs quiet,
to speak. And maybe instead of seeing night thinking as a problem, you can start seeing it as a message that your inner world is rich, that your mind wants depth, that your brain isn't just trying to survive, it's trying to understand. So the next time you're lying awake at 2 a.m. with 1,000 thoughts swirling, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking something gentler. What is my mind trying to show me right now? Because sometimes the thoughts that keep you awake aren't there to steal your sleep. They're there to reveal who you are becoming. And if you're a night thinker, chances are your mind isn't restless. It's just awake in a world that finally went quiet. If this felt a little too familiar, you're definitely not the only one. I'd love to hear what your mind tends to think about at night. And if you want to keep exploring the strange, hidden patterns of the human psyche, the thoughts we all have but rarely